Let me tell you a story about a boy who couldn't speak. He was born in ancient Greece, in a time when your voice was your greatest weapon, when public oratory was the path to power, influence, and survival. But this boy had a terrible stutter. His voice was weak, his breath was short, and his words came out mangled and broken. The other children mocked him. His teachers told him he was stupid. They said he would never amount to anything. He had a dream of becoming a great speaker, of standing before the crowds and moving them with his words. But nature had dealt him a cruel hand. He was told it was impossible. He was told to give up. And yet, he refused. He went down to the beach, put pebbles in his mouth to force his tongue to work against the sharp edges, and spoke to the roaring ocean waves, forcing his voice to be louder than the wind. He practiced for days, months, years. The obstacle was his stutter. The way was to use the pebbles. The impediment to action, advanced action. That boy's name was Demosthenes, and he became the greatest orator in the history of ancient Greece. This is the essence of Stoicism. This is the principle that Ryan Holiday resurrected in his modern classic, The Obstacle is the Way, a book that has become the secret weapon of entrepreneurs, athletes, and Navy SEALs across America. Now let me ask you something. When something goes wrong in your life, what is your first reaction? Be honest. Do you complain? Do you feel sorry for yourself? Do you blame the economy, your boss, your luck, your genetics, your circumstances? Most people do. Most people see an obstacle and they freeze. They see it as a wall. They see it as a sign that they should stop. They see it as a reason to quit. But there is a different way. There is a way to see obstacles not as barriers, but as fuel. Not as reasons to stop, but as reasons to push forward. And that is what Ryan Holiday teaches us through the ancient philosophy of Stoicism. The Stoics understood something that we have largely forgotten. They understood that the world is chaotic, unpredictable, and often cruel. They understood that bad things happen to good people. They understood that you cannot control most of what happens to you. But they also understood something incredibly empowering. They understood that you can control how you respond. You can control your perception, your action, and your will. And those three things are the keys to turning any obstacle into an advantage. The first step is perception. Perception is how you view an event. It is the lens through which you see the world. And here is the radical insight that the Stoics discovered. An event is not inherently good or bad. It is just an event. Your perception makes it good or bad. It is not the thing that happens to you that matters. It is your interpretation of the thing that happens to you that determines your experience of it. Think about that for a moment. A fire destroys your factory. Most people would see this as a tragedy, and it is. But Thomas Edison, when his factory burned down in 1914, losing millions of dollars of equipment and all his insurance, didn't see it that way. He watched it burn, called his son, and said, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." The next morning, he walked among the ashes, saw that he had been working on a new phonograph prototype, and said, "All our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start anew." That is perception. He didn't deny the reality of the fire. He just chose to see the opportunity within the destruction. He chose to see the obstacle as the way. And out of those ashes, he rebuilt and created the record player, one of his greatest inventions. The second step is action. Action is what you do about the obstacle. It is the physical movement you take to overcome it. The Stoics were not passive philosophers. They didn't just sit around thinking about how to deal with problems. They believed in relentless, persistent, and creative action. But here is the key. Action does not mean panicking. It does not mean flailing around. It means moving with purpose. It means breaking down the obstacle into manageable pieces and addressing them one by one. It means doing what you can with what you have, where you are. There is a famous story from ancient Rome. A general was facing a massive enemy army. His troops were terrified. They were outnumbered. They wanted to retreat. The general didn't give a long speech. He didn't try to pump them up with false confidence. He just walked to the front of the line, picked up a shovel, and started digging a trench. He literally took action. He did the work that needed to be done. And his troops, seeing his calm and determined action, joined him. They dug the trench. They built the fortifications. And when the enemy arrived, they were prepared. They had turned the obstacle of fear and being outnumbered into the action of fortification. The general understood that action dissipates fear. When you are doing something, you are not worrying. When you are moving, you are not frozen. Action is the antidote to paralysis. The impediment to action advances action. When you have an obstacle in front of you, the very existence of that obstacle pushes you to act, to innovate, to find a way around it, through it, or over it. And then there is the third step, will. Will is the inner strength that allows you to endure when action is not enough. It is the willingness to accept what you cannot change and still find meaning and purpose. It is the endurance to keep going when everything seems to be falling apart. Will is the foundation upon which perception and action are built. Without will, you will give up when things get hard. Without will, you will let the obstacle defeat you. The Stoics believed that the human spirit is unbreakable. They believed that no matter what happens to you, you still have the ability to choose your response. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote about this in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. He observed that the prisoners who survived the concentration camps were not the strongest or the healthiest. They were the ones who found meaning in their suffering. They were the ones who exercised their will to choose their attitude, even in the most horrific circumstances. Frankl famously wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That is the will. It is the space between the obstacle and your reaction. It is your ultimate power. When you exercise your will, you are saying to the universe, 'You can take everything from me, but you cannot take my ability to choose how I respond.' You are the master of your own mind." Now, let me tell you why this book has become such a phenomenon in the United States, especially among entrepreneurs and athletes. Because entrepreneurs and athletes face obstacles every single day. They face failure. They face rejection. They face injuries. They face competition. They face market crashes. They face critics. And the ones who succeed, the ones who reach the highest levels of achievement, are not the ones who avoid obstacles. They are the ones who embrace them. They are the ones who see the obstacle as the way. Think about the modern entrepreneur. They start a business with a dream. They pour their life savings into it. They work 18-hour days. And then the economy crashes, or a competitor steals their idea, or their product fails. Most people would quit. They would say, This isn't for me. But the entrepreneur who studies Stoicism says, what does this obstacle teach me? How does it make me stronger? How does it force me to innovate? They use the crash to pivot. They use the competitor to differentiate. They use the failure to learn. They use the obstacle to advance. Think about the athlete. They train their entire lives for a moment. They give up everything. They sacrifice their bodies. And then, 2 weeks before the Olympics, they tear a ligament. Their dream is over, or so it seems. But the athlete who practices the philosophy of the obstacle is the way doesn't give up. They focus on what they can do. They rehab. They strengthen the muscles around the injury. They mentally rehearse their performance. They come back stronger, more focused, and more resilient. They use the injury as fuel. The impediment to action advanced their action. The obstacle that was supposed to stop them made them better. This is why Ryan Holiday's book is passed around in locker rooms and boardrooms like a sacred text. Because it works. It is not just philosophy. It is a practical, actionable, battle-tested strategy for life. Let me give you another example, one that shows how perception, action, and will can change the course of history. In 1864, the United States was in the middle of the Civil War. General Ulysses S. Grant was tasked with destroying the Confederate Army. He was outnumbered, he was outgunned, he was in hostile territory. Every engagement was a brutal, bloody slog, but Grant had a quality that made him different from the other generals. He had relentless will. He would fight, and if he lost, he would attack again the next day. He didn't retreat. He didn't make excuses. He just kept pushing forward. His troops were exhausted. His subordinates were questioning his leadership. But Grant had a simple philosophy. I propose to fight it out on this line if it takes all summer. He turned the obstacle of being outnumbered and outgunned into the action of relentless pressure. He broke the will of his enemy. He won the war. This is what the Stoics call the art of acquiescence. It is not giving up. It is accepting the reality of the situation and committing to the path forward, no matter how difficult. It is recognizing that the only way out is through. Ryan Holiday writes about the story of John D. Rockefeller, the founder of Standard Oil. Rockefeller was a young man in the 1860s, just getting started in the oil business. But he faced a massive obstacle. The oil industry was chaotic. Prices were volatile. There were too many players. Everyone was panicking. The price of oil crashed. Almost everyone went bankrupt. But Rockefeller looked at this chaos and saw an opportunity. He saw that the obstacle of low prices and panic was actually a gift. It allowed him to buy up all the inefficient competitors at a fraction of their value. He used the crisis to consolidate power. He used the obstacle to create a monopoly. He became the richest man in the history of the world, not because he avoided the obstacle, but because he embraced it. He used perception, action, and will to turn a disaster into an empire. He didn't just survive the crisis, he used the crisis to win. So, what is the practical takeaway for you right now? What is the obstacle in front of you? Is it a financial problem? Is it a relationship issue? Is it a health crisis? Is it a career setback? Is it a fear you can't shake? Whatever it is, I want you to look at it differently. I want you to stop seeing it as a wall. I want you to start seeing it as a path. I want you to ask yourself, what does this obstacle want me to learn? What skill does it force me to develop? What part of my character does it force me to strengthen? How does it force me to innovate, to adapt, to grow? The obstacle is not your enemy. The obstacle is your teacher. The obstacle is your sparring partner. The obstacle is the thing that will make you stronger if you let it. But you have to let it. You have to choose to perceive it differently. You have to take action against it. And you have to develop the will to endure its hardships. Let me share one more story, a story that Ryan Holiday often tells. It is the story of the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Marcus was a Stoic philosopher. He was also the most powerful man in the world. He spent his entire reign fighting wars, dealing with plagues, managing treacherous politicians, and trying to hold the empire together. He had every reason to complain, but he didn't. He wrote in his journal, which became the book Meditations. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He was writing this to himself in his tent in the middle of a brutal campaign against Germanic tribes. He was reminding himself that the very challenges he faced were the things that would define his legacy. The wars made him a general. The plagues taught him resilience. The treachery taught him wisdom. He didn't just endure the obstacles. He used them to become a better leader and a better human being. And his philosophy has survived for nearly 2,000 years because it works. It works for emperors. It works for billionaires. It works for athletes. And it will work for you. Here is the truth that Ryan Holiday wants you to understand. The universe is not conspiring against you. It is conspiring for you. The obstacles you face are not punishments. They are opportunities. They are the raw material from which you can build your character, your skills, and your life. But it requires a shift in mindset. It requires you to stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this asking of me?" It requires you to stop shrinking from challenges and start seeking them out. It requires you to understand that the path to success is not a straight line. It is a series of obstacles that you must overcome, and in overcoming them, you become the person you were meant to be. I want to leave you with a challenge. Today, right now, identify your biggest obstacle. Write it down. Then I want you to reframe it. I want you to ask yourself, how can I use this? How can this obstacle be the way? What is the first, immediate, actionable step I can take to move towards it? And then, I want you to take that step. Action. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. Because the time to start is always now. The obstacle is in front of you. It is not going away. You cannot avoid it. You cannot wish it away. The only thing you can do is move through it. And in moving through it, you will find that the obstacle was not the end of your journey. It was the beginning of it. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. So, are you ready to embrace your obstacle? Are you ready to turn it into your advantage? Are you ready to say, "This is not stopping me. This is making me"? The choice is yours. But remember, the obstacle is the way. And the only way out is through.